So yes, hello everyone. Great that you are taking the time and that you want to join one of our sessions. I'm Christian and one of the three co-founders of Echometer. I think many of you know us already. Those who don't know us, we are a startup from Münster. You can also see the university on the next slide. We are basically a spin-off originally. From the psychological faculty, actually. So I'm also a psychologist, and that's the perspective that we are generally trying to look at agile team development. And our main purpose is that we want to unleash human potential at work. And I think what you probably also know is that we believe that the agile retrospective, the ceremony is probably the best ceremony to start doing this in iterative loops, basically. Yes. Now, giving a quick overview over the agenda, we definitely want to make this interactive, this session. So we will start with a little input from our expert Jean on the sustainable pace. But then we also try to make this interactive and have some sessions where we do a little peer-to-peer coaching. So we build groups and then see if we can help each other in this area of sustainable pace, and then have a little summary. So I'll pass over to Jean now.
Nice. Thank you very much. Yes, let's talk about sustainable pace. Actually, it's not something that is very new. It has been part of the Agile Manifesto in 2001, and actually even before that in extreme programming, it was something that was referenced quite often. So at the core, what is it about? It's about promoting a sustainable development, which means that, as it's written here, the sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So this boils down in the end to this graphic here. So of course, everybody's trying to go as fast as you can. And there is a point at which the costs of going fast are increasing. And this is where you don't have sustainable pace anymore. So sustainable pace is really the pace that you can hold for theoretically an indefinite period. So what are these consequences? Because we think there's a lot of literature and a lot of tips out there on how you can, in general, speed up. But when is the point when you actually shouldn't try any further to speed up, but instead reflect on how far you've gone and if you should maybe go slower? And this is where unsustainable pace comes in as an interesting concept. Because what happens when you are pacing too fast? Well, number one, of course, there's a higher stress level. People need to do over hours in order to get their work done. That, in the end, leads to worse communication and less mutual support and lower team morale. So for teamwork, unsustainable pace is definitely a very bad influence. Also, when we look at the middle here, so unsustainable pace means you have little time to get to know new topics and think about innovative ideas. And that leads to less proactive change from the team. So less innovation capacity from the team. And also, you probably all have best practices on what you think your team should comply with. But if there is an unsustainable pace, those are the situations when you don't follow these best practices. You build up technical debt or operational debt, and in the end, that makes it way more likely to make errors and have a higher error rate in the end. And of course, all these effects are not isolated. They all influence each other. So there could be a lot more errors shown in this graphic. But just to show that for whatever output you're aiming for, if it's quality or innovation or also developing a team, unsustainable pace is definitely something you would want not to have. So why is it happening anyways? And there are some common causes and solutions for this. One is external pressure. So when teams are pushed by managers, by stakeholders from whatever side to try to accomplish more than they know they can. And the tip here is to create a management awareness for sustainable pace. So actively communicating the long-term costs that not running at a sustainable pace have, and having them understand it, so that it becomes a management decision to maybe go sometimes over pacing, but definitely to avoid at all costs of doing this too long, because you deteriorate the potential of your team in the long run. Second one is unrealistic sprint goals. So differently from the first one, which was about external pressure, this is about teams setting their own sprint goals too ambitious. And there, it's of course about the learning loop that you have within the team. So it's about reflecting when you are looking at the sprint results to check, did we need overtime or extensive stress to get all of this done? Because maybe you could reconsider that you didn't achieve your sprint goal if it was necessary for some people to work overtime. And that reflection will then help you to be more realistic in the next sprint plannings. Third one is scope creeping. So when you have agreed to work on something and you have made a commitment to finish it in this week, for example, and then somebody notices, oh, well, how about we also do this and that to make the feature even better? And that's, of course, always very easy to say. And also, changing requirements shouldn't be a blocker. So it's not about only teaching the teams to say no, but also to help the team actively communicate the consequences, saying, hey, of course, this new requirement sounds also very interesting, but we didn't plan for this. So if we want to change the focus now, this also has some consequences for the deadline, and we might not be able to hold it. And the fourth reason is deadlines in themselves. So deadlines some of them they simply are there, they are real. For example, when you have a submission deadline for something, but others are rather artificial. And I think it's our job as team leads and team coaches really to call out and prevent artificial deadlines. There's really no point in why something, when there's no negative consequence, should be done by tomorrow noon. This is just creating artificial pressure and encouraging teams to not going at a sustainable pace. So the recommendation would be to not commit on deadlines if it's not needed, but rather commit on what you will focus on. So what will you and your team have as the priority number one at the moment? And then leave the commitment at that without necessarily committing to a specific deadline, especially if the topic is very unknown and you cannot really say. Yeah, then we already said, like, there's a nice analogy here with marathon runners. So as a marathon runner myself, and this is the image I was referring to, unsustainable pace, and every runner knows that, very hard to recover from. Number two, will always worsen your overall result. So if you look at what a team can accomplish over a year, then you will definitely not, and you want to optimize that. So what can you achieve after the year? It's never worth trying to optimize the short-term deliveries. Just like myself, when I run a marathon, it doesn't make sense to try to get a very good time for the first 10 kilometers, because trying to optimize the 10 kilometers will definitely leave me at the worst result when I'm looking at the marathon time. And the third thing is it can be prevented. So this is the interesting part about the analogy. So what every marathon runner has and does very good is self-awareness. So it's about, and this is automatics. You don't need to think about it. If you run too fast, your body will tell you very quick that you are too fast and you will slow down automatically. Now the question is, are we as teams also in a position to notice it early on when we are going too fast? So we think team retrospectives can be one ceremony that you can use to identify this, or even cool-down periods. So periods where you actively try to reflect and think about this pace. And yeah, so this is what everyone can do basically. And then if you look at pro athletes, what they also have is fitness tracking. So these smartwatches and so on and so forth. I think if you really want to go all out and optimize the speed that you can go, then it definitely makes sense to also use team health checks like Spotify does, for example, so that you get regular quantitative feedback that serves as an early indicator if something is pointing in a wrong direction. Right. And this is already the part where we want to get a little interactive. So I'm pasting this link into our chat.